Today we will begin working on Unit 1, which will cover rational and irrational numbers. Let's start by talking about what an integer is. An integer is any positive or negative whole number. We're going to begin this lesson by discussing how to add integers. Our EQ, how do I add integers? One method that we can use is to use a number line to add positive and negative numbers. When adding a positive number, we will move in the positive direction, which means we're going to move to the right. When adding a negative number, we're going to move in the negative direction, which means we're going to move to the left. So let's look at this problem. As you can see, we always start at 0. From 0, we go to positive 3 on this number line, which means 3 is the first part of our problem. To 3, we are going to add negative 6. So what happens is we start from 0 on our number line, we move over to positive 3, we plot our point, and now we are going to take 6 away, or we're going to add negative 6. Since we're adding a negative number, we are going to move to the left. So we're going to move 6 spaces to the left, or 6 units. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 units to the left would give us negative 3. So that means that 3 plus negative 6 equals negative 3. Look at this example with me. Negative 5 plus 6 is blank units from negative 5 in the blank direction. For this problem, we are just starting by looking at the expression negative 5 plus negative 6. This question asks us how many units from negative 5. Negative 5 is our first number. So that's where we began. Then we're looking to negative 5, we're adding negative 6. So that means that negative 5 plus negative 6 is 6 units from negative 5. And since this 6 is a negative number, that means that it is in the negative direction on the number line. So if we were to draw our number line, our number line could be similar to this. So we're going to start on 0. From 0, we're going to move to our first number, which is negative 5. From negative 5, we're adding negative 6, which means we're adding 6 units in the negative direction. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 units in the negative direction, which gives us negative 11. So negative 5 plus negative 6 is negative 11. When adding integers, we can also add a number and its opposite. When we add a number to its opposite, that gives us 0, which is the additive inverse. So what do we mean by additive inverse? The sum of a number and its opposite is 0. Two numbers that have a sum of 0 are additive inverses. So with the inverse property of addition, every number has an additive inverse, and the sum of the number and its additive inverse equals 0. For example, 5 plus negative 5 equals 0, and negative 5 plus 5 equals 0. Remember, when looking for additive inverse, make sure that you have the same number in both positive and negative values. The positive and the negative values are what equals 0. Let's look at this example. We're going to circle the ones that are additive inverses. Remember, additive inverse means you're adding a number to its opposite. So if we look at the first one, negative 5 plus 5, the the opposite of negative 5 is positive 5. So negative 5 plus 5 are additive inverses. Next we have 8 plus negative 8. I know that the opposite of 8 is negative 8, so here I'm adding additive inverses. The next one we see is 12 plus negative 12. The opposite of 12 is negative 12. So together, 12 plus negative 12 equals 0, so they're additive inverses. Then we have negative 8. The opposite of negative 8 is positive 8. So there is another example of additive inverses. Next we see negative 12 plus negative 12. Well, I know that the opposite of negative 12 is positive 12. That's not a positive number, so those are not additive inverses. Next we have 5 plus negative 5. The opposite of positive 5 is negative 5, so those are additive inverses. We now see 8 plus 8. Here we're adding two positive 8s. They're not opposites of one another, so they are not additive inverses. Then we have negative 5 plus negative 5. Again, we see two negatives here. We can't have that. The opposite of negative 5 is positive 5, so those are not additive inverses. Example 3. Is the value of the expression negative 52 plus negative 52 less than 0, equal to 0, or greater than 0? When looking at this question, I see that I have negative 52 plus another negative 52. Both of these values are less than 0. Therefore, negative 52 plus negative 52 is going to be less than 0. A second method that we can use to add integers is to use the integer rules. When adding integers with the same sign, we add and take the sign. When adding integers with different signs, we're going to subtract the absolute values and take the sign of the number with the greatest absolute value. Now, what does it mean when we say absolute value? Absolute value is the distance a number is from 0 on the number line. Absolute value is neither positive nor negative. With absolute value, it is just the distance or the number of units that number is from 0 on the number line. Now let's talk about subtracting integers. Remember, an integer is any positive or negative whole number. How do I subtract integers? Just like with addition of integers, we can use a number line to subtract positive and negative numbers. For example, you have $7. You borrowed money from your friend to buy a $20 sweater. How much are you in debt? Here we have our problem, 7, which is the amount of money that you had, minus the $20 that you borrowed from your friend. This 20 is negative in value because it's money that you borrowed. So subtracting 20 is the same as adding the opposite of 20. The opposite of 20 is negative 20. So 7 minus 20 is the same thing as saying 7 plus negative 20. Now again, we can use our number line to answer this question. So as you can see, we started at 0. From 0, we went over to 7, which was our first number, and we plotted that point on our number line. From here, we stop and we turn around. We turn around because negative represents stopping and turning around and moving in the opposite direction. So from here, we're going to move 20 units to the left. So we're turning around and we're moving, and we're going to move 20 units. So that's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20 units. We stop here and we see that 7 minus 20 is negative 13. If you look closely, you will see that subtracting integers is just like adding the opposite sign. For this example, we are going to write equivalent subtraction and addition expressions for each number line model. Let's look at the first one together. As we can see, we started at 0, and our first number in our expression is negative 2, because that's how many places we moved from 0, or how many units we are from 0. From there, we are subtracting. And we can count that we're subtracting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 units. So negative 2 minus 5 is negative 7. As an addition problem, we can rewrite this by adding the opposite sign. So we're going to keep negative 2 as it is because that's the first part of our expression. To that, we are going to add negative 5. Remember, we began by subtracting 5. The opposite would be to add a negative 5. So when adding integers, or when subtracting integers, we're going to add the opposite sign. Try the second one on your own. The first number in our expression should be 6 because we moved from 0 to 6, so that was 6 units. From there, we took away or subtracted 7 units to get negative 1. If we rewrite this problem as addition, that would be 7 plus negative 1. Remember, with subtracting integers, we're going to add the opposite sign. Which expression does this number line model represent? We began at 0. From 0, we moved 2 units. So that's positive 2. From there, we subtracted 1, 2, 3, 4 units. So that is 2 minus 4. We can also write 2 minus 4 as 2 plus negative 4. Remember, when subtracting integers, we're going to add the opposite sign. By now we should understand method 2, which is applying the integer rules. To subtract an integer, you add the opposite sign. So 5 minus 7 is rewritten as 5 plus negative 7. 5 minus negative 7 is rewritten as 5 plus 7. To subtract integers, we add the opposite sign. With this example, between 6 a.m. and noon, the temperature rose from 0 to 8 degrees Fahrenheit. By 5 p.m., it had dropped by 10 degrees Fahrenheit. By 8 p.m., the temperature dropped another 5 degrees. We're going to write and simplify a subtraction expression. So we started at 0, and we rose to 8 degrees. So that means our first number is positive 8. Then it dropped 10 degrees, so that's minus 10. 8 minus 10 is the same as saying 8 plus negative 10, which is negative 2. After negative 2, we see that the temperature dropped another 5 degrees, so that's minus 5. Again, when we are subtracting integers, we add the opposite sign, follow our integer rules. Negative 2 plus negative 5 is negative 7 degrees Fahrenheit. So that would be the temperature by 8 p.m. Find the value of each expression for this example. Check your solutions to make sure they match mine. Remember, when subtracting integers, we change the subtraction sign to addition, and we switch the sign of the second number. So we add the opposite sign. Which expressions are equivalent to 4 plus negative 9? Check your solutions compared to mine. You should have 1 and 3.